Tuesday's tips and tricks.
Wednesday.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another Tuesday's tips and tricks. I'm Chelsea.
I'm Nathaniel.
And this month is all about spring cleaning. We're in March, spring is in a couple weeks, and today we're going to be focusing on how to prune those weeping trees that you might have.
Yeah, and specifically we're going to be focusing on how to prune your small ornamental weeping trees. Please do not take this video and try to prune your 40 or 50 foot tall weeping willow in your backyard. You should hire a professional for that. But we can help you learn to prune some of the smaller trees in your landscape and give you a lot of tips for that. So let's get started. So there's some general principles that we're going to cover that really can be applied to pruning any tree. You're going to start by working on the inside of the tree, moving outwards, and as you go along you're going to remove inner growth that's just going to be shaded out in the summer and spring. You're going to pull out, cut out branches that are crossing and rubbing because that will just create damage in the future on the tree. And then you're going to remove anything that's dead. So those are your first, on any tree, that's your first go-to on pruning. So let's take a look at that. There's a branch here that's dead. I can tell this is dead because the bark is desiccating. If you look down here on the younger bark, it's shriveling and it's brittle. But if you're not confident in that, you can always do a scratch test where you just take your pruners or a knife and you scratch on the bark and until you get through that bark layer, and it's brown all the way through there. There's no green at all. So this whole piece here is dead, probably this piece too. So I'm going to grab my loppers and take that dead out. Notice that this is on the interior of the tree. This isn't on the outside. So we're going to take that off way up there. Try and get a fairly clean cut. That was a big old knot on that one, so that it heals over nice. And when you get a big cut like that, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and have some pruning sealant on hand. You can get the type that you paint, or you can get the spray on. If I do use this, I like the spray on because it's fast. And then you just cover that with the sealant, and that protects the wound. There's wood growing out here. This is going to get lost this season. It's going to get covered up and probably die back over the season because of shade. So anything on the inside we're going to take out. It doesn't matter if it's alive or dead, you're going to take it off. Here's an example of a younger branch that's growing up and laying on top of this one. So that's going to rub as it gets older, and that could cause scarring on the tree. So you're going to take that off. You also want to try, as you go along, you'll see, like down here, so many branches coming out from one general area, and I really only need 2 or 3. Otherwise you get big ugly bulges in your branches. So we're going to take out, I'm actually going to reduce this to 1 because this piece here is dead, and that'll be the new lead for this little branch here. If you've never done this before to your mulberry or your weeping tree, it'll probably be a lot messier a job than this, but it's the same principle, starting from the inside, working out. And as you get the outer structure uncovered, then you'll know what to do. So when I prune a weeping tree, I prune off what's growing down, and I save what's going up and over like this as much as I can. And that gives it a continual upward growing, interesting structure with many arches in the tree. So you're pruning for structure. You want the main, I call it the bones of the tree. We're not trying to keep all this little branching. These trees are so vigorous, this will explode with growth and be full of branching again next season. You don't need to save every little branch. So instead of diverting all this energy into all these little branches, now it's in those main branches you want to keep, and those will explode with growth and develop faster. So I took that all the way back to up to here. And really I could take it all the way up to here, and that would encourage these buds back here to come up like this and drop down. And then that gets you that gradual over the years, this arched structure that just keeps building up. You can see I left a little stub here. That was intentional. On the younger, smaller branches like this, you want to leave a little bit of wood to die back so that the bud doesn't die.
So every branch that he's trimming right now, all of this new growth that came on last year, he's cutting all the new growth back, he's just not cutting it off. So he'll cut it back real tight, but anything he wants gone, he's going to cut at the base.
Yeah. So I cut it way back. This entire branch is 1 season's growth, and it's been pruned on the tip already earlier in the season. because it was getting so long. If it hadn't been cut on the tip, it probably would be down to the ground. Very vigorous trees. Anything that grows on the tree back towards the center of the tree instead of outwards, I'm taking off. At the end of this exercise, you will have taken off more than you left on, but the tree will recover and be beautiful because of it. This is the best time of year to be pruning your deciduous trees and shrubs. It's March 2nd, and it's the time of year where the buds are starting to swell, which means it's a time where the trees are going to have their most vigorous growth and will heal from pruning wounds the fastest and regrow the fastest. And as you're pruning, one thing to keep an eye out for is damage in the tree.
So in here we have damage from squirrels. They got a little hungry and they started eating some of the bark. So we're going to show you how to take care of this.
And you can do the same thing. Some trees have real delicate bark, like your Japanese maples. And sometimes in the wintertime they get what's called sun scalding, where the bark splits open from exposure to wind and sun over the winter because there's no foliage to shade it. And you can do the same thing to those open wounds like that. You could use probably pruning tape too, but I like to use, this is called tree wrap. You can get this at most garden centers, and I'll show you how to wrap it. So you're just going to start it like this, just on the outer edge of that wound, and start wrapping and keep it tight. Tension is what I use to hold this in place. It's kind of scrunchy paper, so it spans, so you can pull it a little bit tighter. It won't tear as easy as you might think. All this is doing is protecting that wound so that it has an easier time with healing. Now how I finish this off typically is I'll leave like pull it tight, but then leave a loose open spot there. I can feed this through and then just work it. I mean, you gotta be a little careful because it is paper, but work it tight so that this holds. It's not going to tie like a ribbon. You're not going to tie it. You're just going to pull this through until it's tight. And then it should hold. And I leave that on for about a season. And then next year when I go to prune this tree again, I'll start ripping it off. Just to recap, we're going to start pruning from the inside of the tree, working outwards, removing any dead wood, taking out any crisscrossing branches that might be rubbing and causing damage to the tree, and also any branches that are growing in towards the center of the tree rather than out. You also want to take off anything that's growing off the bottom of a branch, growing straight down off the bottom of a branch, because you want to preserve those up and out arches that give the tree interesting structure.
And if you make a mistake, it's okay. The good news about trees is they will grow back, just like hair. So that's your Tuesday's tips and tricks. We hope you have a great week. Happy pruning.